everyone, it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create this gorgeous Festive Grannies Garland. This is made with some really easy to make granny squares, just 3 rounds, and we kind of alternated the colors a little bit. We're going to make some very easy tassels. I've added some wood buttons just to kind of make it a little bit more interesting, add a little texture to the garland as well. And then we're going to learn how to just create a simple chain and join it all together. Now you can make this as large as you want. I made mine with 6 grannies. I'm going to hang it across a mirror or window or a narrow area. But you can make yours very long and wrap it around a whole tree. I just can imagine how beautiful that would be. You could also make a shorter one and just kind of put it around a package as well. So there's a lot of options for this. Like I said, you could put it in a window, across a mirror, just kind of draped maybe across a whole room on the wall. So we're going to learn how to do all the parts together. We're going to crochet these granny squares together. They're just 3 rounds and we kind of alternated the colors. We're going to learn how to make a tassel, very simple to make tassel, just using your hands and a pair of scissors. No fancy tools needed. I'm going to show you how to add some optional beads if you want to add a little bit of texture. And then finally, we're going to put it all together with this really simple chain. So let's get started, and I'm going to give you a little bit of sizing next, but you can really use scraps and any size hook, make your squares bigger or smaller, and really customize it. You can make your tassels bigger, and you can make as many granny squares as you like to make this as long as you want as well. Our finished garland, if you make it exactly the way I make it, is about 26 inches long. Now I will also show you how to adjust your chains in between to give more space in between your squares or to bring them together. But this is 26 inches from end to end of our garland. See the 2 ends here? 26 inches. Now each square I measured across as we're treating it like a square instead of a diamond. So this is 3 inches by 3 inches square. Each tassel from the top of the tassel to the bottom is 3 inches as well. So these are the this way, the same 3 inches, 3 inches. And then each of these combination pieces here, so the square from the top point here to the bottom of the tassel is about 7 inches, just to give you a general idea of what we have. Now that's with the beads. If you don't do the beads, it will obviously make it a little bit shorter. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle. A tape measure is super helpful to get the length of garland that you'd like to have. We're going to be using a 5mm H crochet hook for this. This is my Furls Wood Streamline. I'll put a link down below if you'd like to get a discount coupon code for that. For our yarn, we're going to be using this pretty kind of festive yarn called Friends Wool from Hobie. This is 100% wool yarn. And we're going to be using the colors cranberry, artichoke, and off-white. Now this is, if you need to substitute yarn, this is a medium 4 on the yarn weight scale and recommends this H hook that we'll be using for this project. So I'll put the link down below for this yarn as well. But again, this is cranberry, color 42, artichoke, color 110, and off-white, which is color 2. And I won't be using all the yarn for this, but each ball of this is 109 yards. So this will be more than enough to make yourself a nice garland. We're going to be using all 3 colors for our diamonds. And then as a total optional thing, you can grab some beads. I have these wood beads I thought would be really cute and add a little bit of texture to my garland. You could use something sparkly or beads in the same color as the yarn that you'll be using. But this is optional if you have some beads laying around that you'd like to use. I thought that these would be pretty to add in between our diamonds and around the tassel and things like that. So let's get started. Okay, so our tutorial has a couple of different parts. We are going to do some granny squares, so we're going to make a granny square together. I already have a few here, and as you can see, I sort of planned the color ahead of time. I did alternating red and green centers for round 1. For round 2, I did all cream for each square, just to kind of tie them in together. And then for round 3, I did the opposite color of the center. So if I did a green center, I did a red center. If I did a red center, I did a green round 3. Okay, we also, let me slide all this out of the way. We're also going to be making some tassels together. So our granny squares are going to be turned on their sides to make kind of a diamond shape. And the outer round 3 I made the opposite color tassel. So you don't have to do the same colors as me, but just in my color planning, I wanted to do a little bit of a contrast. And then to sort of mimic the cream that I have here, earlier we had talked about some beads. So I'm going to add some beads, and they're a light wood, so they kind of pick up and kind of bring the colors throughout the piece, okay? So just to kind of map out what we're doing here. So we're going to start by making our granny squares. And the granny squares are, like I said, 3 rounds. I'm going to scoot the tassels out of the way because we're going to do those next. But like I said, the granny squares are 3 rounds and 1 color per round, okay? So I have made 3 of the green outer edge ones and only 2 of the red outer edge ones. So we're going to make 1 more of these. So I'm going to keep it nearby for reference. So let's kind of scoot all this out of the way. Grab our hook, and our round 1 begins with the green, okay? So I'm going to grab the green, and I have all my colors here, and I've done it so that they're center pull, so I can just, when you're doing multiple colors like this, it's so nice just to grab the yarn like this. This is also, as a side note, and I probably already said this, but this is a great project to use up some scraps. So let's pull some of the green out because we're going to start with our center green once again. And I'm just going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Okay, so what we're going to do is put a slip knot on our hook to begin. So wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop. Bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up the loop, and tighten. Next, we're going to do a chain 4. We're going to be creating a ring that we will be working our stitches into. We're going to make like a little plus sign, if you will. Okay, so to make a chain, wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then what we're going to do is in the chain farthest from our hook, we're going to join with a slip stitch. Insert the hook into that farthest chain from the hook, that first chain you made. Bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. And now we have our ring that we're going to work into. And if you need to kind of open it up a little bit, that's okay. As a side note, I do get this question pretty frequently. If you prefer the magic ring, feel free to do that instead. It works just as well. You just won't need to do the starting chains if you're doing it that way. All right, so we're going to do round 1. So for round 1, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now this counts as one of our double crochets. In the center of the ring, work 2 double crochets. So to make a double crochet, wrap the yarn around the hook, insert it into the center of the ring, and bring up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. Okay, so that was 1 double crochet, and we need 2. So work another double crochet in the center of the ring. And that is our first little cluster. So then we're going to chain 1, and then again into the center of the ring. This time we're going to work 3 double crochets. Now remember, I said that chain 3 counted as one of our double crochets, so that gives the appearance of 3 here. Okay, our little clusters are 3. So in the center of the ring, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And remember, we're making a little plus sign, so we need to do a couple more groupings. So chain 1 once again. Those chain 1s are going to create a corner space of our first round. And then in the center of the ring once again, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. And then 1 last group of double crochets. So in the center of the ring, work 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1 once again. And then, remember that chain 3 we did at the beginning of the round? We're going to count 3 chains up. 1, 2, 3. And join to close the round with a slip stitch in that 3rd chain up. Insert the hook into the chain. Bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. And round 1 is complete. All right, we're going to move on to round 2. So what we need to do is cut our yarn. I also didn't mention this before, but this tail that we had at the beginning, I held that along the edge as we worked our stitches, and as you can see, it wove that in. So just to save yourself an extra step, you can do that. Okay, so I cut the yarn, we're gonna fasten off. Wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through the loop. All right, now that tail, if you want to get it out of the way, you can pull it snug and just give it a little snip, okay? Now, grab your next color. So for our square, we're going to be using the cream for round 2. Grab that yarn. And then what we're going to do is, remember those chain 1s we did in between all those groupings? Those created little corner spaces. So you can't really, it looks like very much like a circle right now, but if you kind of like open those up a little bit, you can see it a little bit better. It'll start looking like a square pretty soon because we're going to add some corners. But these will serve as our corners for now. So go into any of those chain 1 spaces where you made a chain 1 that created a space. So the chain 1 space, insert your hook, hook that new yarn on, bring it through, and then we're just going to tie it right on. And then again, we'll hold that tail along the edge as we work, and it'll weave that end in as well. It'll save a lot of time at the end, especially because we're going to have a lot of squares. Okay, so grab your yarn and your hook, reinsert your hook back into that same chain 1 space, bring up a loop, and now to start round 2, we're going, and see I'm holding that tail along the edge right here. We're going to chain 3 to start the round. So 1, 2, and 3. And then in that same space, we're going to work 2 double crochet. So 1 double crochet and 2 double crochet. And then we're going to chain 1. And then in that same space, what we're going to do, still holding that tail along the edge in the back here, along that same, in that same space, we're going to work 3 double crochet. So 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, hop over to that next space here. Now you can drop that tail because that's been woven in. You can see it's tucked in there now. You can kind of drop that tail. We'll trim all this later. And we're going to skip over those next 3 double crochets here and look for the next space. So that next chain 1 space you come to, we're going to work 3 double crochet. So 1, and you can hold this tail along the edge now, your other tail that you come to. So 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 1 and then work 3 more double crochet in that same space. So 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, hop on over to the next grouping. So we see our 3 double crochets and then there's a chain 1 space. So hop on over to that next chain 1 space and we're going to work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3. I'll get my yarn ball out of the way. It keeps wanting to come on over. And then we're going to chain 1, and then in that same space, once again, we're going to work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. And now the last grouping here, you have your 3 double crochets, and then that chain 1 space. You can go ahead and do the same thing. Work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and 3 double crochet in the same space. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so to finish up round 2, chain 1, and then count 3 chains up and join with a slip stitch. Same thing we did before to close the round. Okay, so round 2 is complete and we are on our way. Our square is very quick to make. All right, our third and final round. So we're going to cut the yarn And I'm going to wrap the yarn around the hook to fasten off. Now if you want to, they kind of get in your way, you can right now go ahead and snip these tails. Give it a little tug and a snip and a tug and a snip. Now this last tail that we ended on, we can't really do that with this one. We're going to take care of that one in the next round. But you could also snip them all at the end too. It's up to you. They sort of get in the way sometimes. So if you want to do it in between rounds, that's fine too. Okay, so what we're going to do is grab our third color. Here's our square, our finished square for comparison. And what we're going to do is we're going to go in any corner space like we did before with your hook. Grab your yarn, hook the new yarn right on there and bring it through. Tie that yarn right into that corner space. And if you notice, this is totally a personal preference. I always tie it sort of at the opposite of other tails, just because if you're doing lots of tails in one place, it can add to, some bulk to it. So I just like to tie it opposite of where the other tails are. Okay, we're again going to hold that tail along the edges we work for this round as well. Reinsert your hook back into that same corner space, bring up a loop, and we're going to chain 3 to start the round. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to work the corner the same way we did in the previous round. So for that first corner, we're going to work 2 double crochets because that chain 3 counts as one of our double crochets. So work 2 double crochets, chain 1. You can scoot things over if your things are a little snug. And then in that same space, work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, now because our square has grown a little bit, we now have a side space to deal with, okay? So go ahead and chain 1, and in your side space, so now our round is going to be corner, side, corner, side, corner, side, corner, side, etc. Okay, before it was just corner, 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 but now it's grown and we have some side spaces, okay? So in that side space here, between the 2 corners, that space there in the middle, you're just going to work 3 double crochets in that one, okay? So 1, whoops, let's redo that. I dropped my loop. 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, drop my loop again. There we go, and 3 double crochet. Then we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to treat the next corner the same way we've been doing, okay? So in that corner space, work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, chain 1, and 3 more double crochet in that corner space. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so as you can see, we have a corner, side, corner. Okay, next we're going to chain 1 and we're going to work another side. So 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. And when you're ready and you happen to come across the tail, you can start holding that along the edge as you work your next stitches. All right, so we're going to go in the corner space. And we're going to work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1 and work 3 more double crochet. I'm still holding that tail. Work 3 double crochet all in that same corner space. So 1, 2, and 3 double crochet. Chain 1, we're at a side space again. You can drop that tail that we were holding before if you had one. Side space, 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Last corner here, 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3. Get some more yarn. chain 1, and in that same corner space, work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, and now our last little area to work in is our side. So we're going to work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. And then what we're going to do is count 3 chains up, same thing we've been doing all along. 1, 2, 3, and join with a slip stitch. Insert the hook, bring up a loop, bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook, and round 3 is complete. So the last thing we're going to do for our granny square is we can now cut this yarn, fasten off, and then what we need to do is just take care of all the ends of our granny squares. So let me just zoom out so you can see a little bit better here. So what, we kind of talked about this a little bit ago, but if you had some ends, see each one has quite a bit of ends on here. So what you want to do is just for each one, go ahead and trim any ends that you're able to trim. And then any ends that you need to weave in, you can grab your tapestry needle. Let me just trim that last one so I can show you. Oh, there's one more. They're kind of popping up everywhere. Okay, so the last end, when you finished your square here, you'll have to weave in with the tapestry needle. So, oh, there it is, hiding amongst the yarn. Okay, so grab your tapestry needle, thread it. So one thing you want to be careful about is when you're weaving in your ends, you want to make sure you do it on the back. So the side that faced you while you made your granny square is called the right side, or the public side it's sometimes called. The back of it has like a slightly different look, okay? So you want to make sure you take your end here and you want to go in those back loops of your square, okay? And this is a garland, so the sides that you use, this isn't a reversible kind of project, so that you want to make sure that the fronts are facing and everything looks good on the front. Okay, so I wove my end in and I'm just going to trim. And then what you'll want to do is just repeat for all of your squares, okay? So go through all your squares, take care of any ends, and then when we rejoin, we're going to work on our tassels. I have almost all of them, and we'll make the last one together. Okay, so our granny squares are ready to go. So what I was kind of explaining a little bit earlier is to plan out your colors here. So we're going to do alternating colors, and I am going to do some alternating tassels as well, just to kind of mix up the colors as much as possible, because we only have a 3-color palette, so we're going to kind of mix it up. So what I'm planning on doing is putting a green tassel at the bottom of each red square. I'm putting a red tassel, and obviously these need to be trimmed a bit, but we're going to take care of all that stuff in just a minute. So as we plan this out, and we're going to make one of the tassels together, but as we plan this out, this will kind of dictate what color tassel we need to make together. Okay, so I have some alternating colors, and I have one more square here that doesn't have a tassel yet. So this one is going to have a green tassel. So let's make that together. Let's clear all these out of the way. And again, we're going to take care of all the trimmings later. All right, so let's make a green tassel together. Grab your yarn once again. And we're going to cut 2 pieces of yarn, each about, I would say, about 12 inches long, give or take. And then, so I have my 2 pieces of yarn, I'm going to set that aside. Next, we're going to take our yarn, and the number of wraps will kind of make your tassel fluffier, or like a slender, make the strands kind of sit down a little bit more, okay? So we're going to do 20 wraps around our hand. So lay the yarn down the front of your hand, like so. And what we're going to do is wrap it around all 4 fingers. So you can use a fancy tassel tool. They do make those if that's what you prefer. I don't use any special tools, just my hands and my scissors. So lay it down across the front of your hand, and we're going to wrap this 20 times. So each time it passes over your index finger, count that as 1 pass, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And let that strand come back down. Then give it a little snip. And then what we're going to do is grab one of our strands of yarn that we cut earlier, and we're going to carefully slide this off of our hand, keeping our bundle nice and secure, keeping those tails pointing down. And then what we're going to do is put the piece of yarn through that loop, and we're going to tie it at the top. Tie it nice and secure so everything looks nice and neat. Just give that a little tie at the top there. And then we're going to lay this back down. And I like to lay the yarn down on a surface like this. Like that. And then just lay my yarn down like that. And it's about the top third or top quarter of our little bundle here that we're going to lay it on, because you can see later how that's going to look. Okay, so you want to kind of eyeball that. Go ahead and tie it together. And you can kind of straighten things out as you go and slide it around as needed. We're just going to tie that nice and tight. And then we're going to give it another tie. Just like that, okay? So our tassel is almost done. It's pretty quick to make. And if you see any pieces that are sort of sticking out more than others, you can kind of go down here and give them a little tug. Just kind of pull those down. So now what we're going to do is we have some loops. So go to the bottom. You're going to have lots of strands here. We're going to trim everything. Go to the bottom and just snip all those loops off, okay? So now we have kind of a rough tassel. We just need to give it a little trim. So grab all your other tassels. Now, as a side note, I didn't mention this before. I made 6 squares. So my garland is going to be 6 squares wide. If you're making more squares, you'll need 1 tassel per square. Now we've been using little scissors so far. I'm going to grab my larger scissors just so I can give these a nice clean trim, okay? With these, you'll have to do multiple cuts. With these, potentially 1 or 2 cuts, okay? So what you want to do is straighten out your tassel. Any crumbs that fall down, just get rid of them. Now, when you tie a tassel, you'll see, this is just a little thing that kind of bothers me that I like to fix. When you tie your tassel, you have one piece that lays down really nice, and then you have one that's sort of, see how that's like sticking up over? If you want to, you can take your tapestry needle and just go under that band like that and just kind of tuck it in, okay? So go ahead and do that if you want that to lay a little bit nicer. Okay, straighten out your tassel, kind of comb it down with your hand, and then we're gonna flip it over like this. And then just give that a nice clean cut straight across, just like that, okay? Give it a little shake, make sure everything's laying nice. And then I'm going to pair it up here. Actually, we can zoom out a little bit more so you can see. We can pair it up with our square and kind of put that aside. So go through each tassel and just sort of give it a little trim straight across. So do that for each tassel and then put it with the square that you want it to be with, okay? Okay, all of our tassels are complete now. And so we're going to do the next step. This is totally optional. You can do this or not. It depends on what you want to do and kind of what look you want. But I'm going to do a couple of beads when I connect my tassels. So we're going to connect the tassel. Again, we're going to turn these so they're kind of like a diamond shape. And we're going to connect the tassel to the bottom. So when we make the garland, we'll connect the granny squares at the top here in this corner space, okay? So what we want to do is most likely your tassel, the 2 strands up here are going to be different lengths. Mine definitely are. So I'm going to trim those flush and thread both of them in my tapestry needle. This is if you're doing the beads, or you could do a bell or something like that. If you're not doing this part, just don't worry about this part. And I'm going to thread, I'm going to do 2 beads in mine. And we're going to push them all the way down. Okay, and now to attach them, we're going to just take one of the strands, thread our tapestry needle. Now you could do this with your fingers too. I just can't fit mine through here. So go into that corner space with one of the strands, and then we're just going to tie it right on, okay? Just like that. So just tie it nice and snug right on there. And then the neat thing about tassels is the ends are super easy to weave in. So what you'll want to do is just take your tapestry needle, go back down into those beads. Make sure too, if you're using beads, that they have a pretty large opening so you can do all this. If not, you can weave it in on the back of your square if you're kind of in a pinch. But I'm going to go back down into my tassel. And there's my end, and I'll just trim that in a minute. Do the same thing with the other end. And go right down. I'm coming under the band too. I'm going right through the middle of that tassel and coming down in the bottom, okay? Now it might be a little snug because we're doing a lot through these beads. And then what you'll want to do here's kind of almost the finished piece. What you'll want to do is kind of straighten out your tassel a little bit. And then once all the little strands are straightened out, take your scissors and just trim everything flush, okay? So here is one component of our garland that is complete. So what you want to do for each of these pairs that you have here, if you're doing the beads like I am, go ahead and do that. If not, just tie the tassel right onto the bottom of your square, okay? So our parts are all assembled, and I just have to say, I am loving these grannies. They look so fun, and they're so festive, and the beads just add a little something. The beads, as a side note, when you hang this, they do give it a little bit of weight. So sometimes with yarn, you get a little bit of, because it's so light, when you have yarn garlands like this, the beads will help give it a little bit of weight to kind of like anchor everything down and hang nicely. But take that into consideration when you're hanging. You probably wouldn't be able to like tape this or something. You definitely need to like put it on some kind of a hook. We're going to be making some chains. We're going to make a little bit of chain at the beginning and then add this one on. Then to do a chain to connect it and then add this one on. I'm going to show you how to do that every step of the way. Now, if you made your granny squares about the same size as mine, this 3 round with the H hook, we're going to have some, I'm going to give you the specific numbers of chains in between. So as you're making your garland, if you want them closer spaced together, you would do less chains in between. If you want them more farther spaced apart, if you're putting it in a larger area, put more chains in between. But as we move through this part of the project, I will tell you how many chains are in between mine so you do have an idea. Okay, so when I was planning mine, I determined that the number of chains in between all of mine would be 16. I like the way that was spaced. Again, try it, see if you like the spacing, and you can adjust as needed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stack these in the order that I want them to be on my garland. So I did red, green, red, green, red, green. Or actually, excuse me, green, red, green, red, green, red. Okay? Just so I can grab one as I go. So then what we're going to do is grab our yarn. I'm going to use the red to make my string, if you will. So what we need to do, let me come in with my zoom a little bit more. We're going to put a slip knot on our hook, and we're just going to make a very simple chain, okay? And I'm going to show you how to attach each one of these as well. So what we're going to do to begin is chain 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So once you've made your 16th chain, grab your first square, and we're going to go into the very top of this, and you have your corner space, and then there's like the chain over it, because remember that chain 1 made the space? We're going to go into the back loops, so you're going to leave this front loop here, and you're going to go into the back loops of that chain and insert your hook, wrap the yarn around the hook, bring up a loop, and then bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. So we're going to do a slip stitch to join, okay? And that looks just like that when it's done, okay? Now we're going to chain 16 more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And you'll see the spacing and if that is your preference as well. Okay, so again, go into the top, find that topmost chain, and we're going to work a slip stitch into those back loops. It just looks a little neater, makes the square show off a little bit nicer. We're going to work a slip stitch into that topmost chain, the back loops of the topmost chain. So let me just show you. This is about, with 16 chains and my squares, how far apart they'll be, okay? So I liked that spacing and I'm going to continue. So once again, let's do one more together and then we can finish on our own. 1, 2, 3, whoops, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Grab your next square, locate the top, look for that chain, go into the back loops of that topmost chain, and work a slip stitch, just like that. Okay, so now we have 3, and you can kind of see how they're looking. Very cute. Okay, let's keep going, working our 16 chains in between, and we'll rejoin in just a minute. Okay, I just joined my last square here, and we're just going to work like we worked 16 at the beginning. We're going to work 16 at the end too. That'll give you a little kind of hanging loop. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Okay, so then we're going to cut, leaving a tail, wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through the loop. Okay, so you can take these tails and you can kind of trim them flush when you're done, and I like to snug those knots up as much as possible, or you could make a little loop with them and use it to hook on something. Actually, if you have something small like a nail, this chain will just kind of pop right on. If you're using something like a hook, like one of those hooks that you can like take down and they're not permanent, you could do that. Also, I want to show you an alternative. If you want to just put a loop at the end here, take your tail. So you can leave this straight here like that and hang it like that. Or take your tail and bring your chain back in to where you joined at that last square, and take your needle and just pull it through like that. And that'll make a little chain loop for you, okay? So you can go back in, make another pass, and just, you know, use that as a loop at the end, okay? So there you go. So you can do it that way too. So there's a couple different ways you can hang it. It really depends on how you want to hang it. If you're putting this around a tree, if you're going to make a really long one and put it on a tree, you wouldn't need that. Or you could hook this on a branch or something, or a hook. But if you need a loop at the end, that's a really easy way to make a loop. Okay, our garland is complete. We have made all of the parts, the squares, the beads attachment, the tassel, and the strand to join it all together. So I really hope you enjoyed this project. There's something about holiday granny squares that I just love. They just feel so warm and cozy and nostalgic, and it's a really beautiful addition to your holiday decor. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.